It was supposed to be another quiet night in Los Angeles. The kind of night where the city hums with secrets but keeps them tucked away under the glow of streetlights. Yet, for Doria Ragland, that night was anything but ordinary. The clock had just crossed midnight when she walked into a house no one was supposed to know about, a private residence in Pasadena. What she carried in her hands, and what she planned to say, would shatter the fragile image her daughter had built over years of global fascination and royal controversy. Because for the first time, Doria wasn't protecting Meghan Markle. She was confronting her. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The whispers started before dawn. Paparazzi cameras caught the faint silhouette of Doria's car slipping down a quiet road. Some thought it was nothing, just another visit, perhaps to a friend or a yoga retreat. But what followed would make headlines around the world. A meeting had taken place, an urgent, secretive, late-night meeting that insiders described as emotionally explosive. And at the center of it all was one chilling detail. Doria had revealed something she swore she would never say out loud. Meghan's real age. But that's only part of the story. The real question is, why now? Think about it. After years of unwavering loyalty, after standing silently through criticism, after watching her daughter rise to royal status and then crash into controversy, why would Doria choose this moment to expose the truth? What was so pressing, so dangerous, that it had to be said under the cover of darkness? Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe, just maybe, it was revenge disguised as redemption. The story begins with a simple contradiction. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, has long claimed to be born in 1981, making her 43. But Doria's sudden admission has reignited a theory that's haunted Meghan for years, that she's actually much older. Not 43, but 48. And that difference, those 5 hidden years, might sound small. Yet in Hollywood, politics, and royalty, 5 years can mean the difference between a star and a scandal. Imagine the fallout if that's true. Every biography, every press release, every interview, every royal record, suddenly rewritten. Every timeline she's used to sculpt her public image called into question. And what if this lie isn't about vanity at all, but about hiding something far deeper? That's the part the world hasn't heard. Not yet. When Meghan left the royal family, she promised a new beginning, a voice of her own, freedom, authenticity. And with her new show set to premiere this year, she positioned herself as a woman reborn, rising from the ashes of royal politics to tell her truth. But what if the truth she's been telling isn't the real one? What if her mother, Doria, the quiet, grounded woman once hailed as Meghan's moral anchor, has decided she can no longer live with the lie? This wasn't a random leak. Doria didn't stumble into this revelation. Sources close to the family describe the night as meticulously planned. She called in 2 people, an attorney and a longtime family friend, and told them what she was about to do could change everything. She asked for privacy, but privacy is a currency the Markle name no longer holds. One of those attendees couldn't resist. A single message sent to a journalist at 2:13 a.m. began the chain reaction. Doria is about to reveal something Meghan can't undo, it read. And it's going to break her. By morning, the world was already guessing. At first, speculation ran wild. Some thought it was about money. Others believed it involved Meghan's rumored fallout with Tyler Perry or her tense negotiation with Netflix executives. But then came a phrase that froze everyone in their tracks: her true age. Suddenly, everything that had once been dismissed as gossip seemed plausible. The dates, the inconsistencies, the missing documents. Even Meghan's old classmates began speaking up online, claiming that timelines didn't add up. A former acting coach allegedly said, "She was always older than she said. She just knew how to play young." So why would Doria confirm it now? What could push a mother to break the unspoken bond that protects her child, even through scandal? Maybe the answer lies not in the fame, but in the fallout. Over the past few months, Doria and Meghan's relationship had reportedly grown strained. Behind the scenes, Doria was said to be frustrated with her daughter's mounting controversies, the canceled Netflix projects, the alleged tension with King Charles, the financial strain of their Montecito lifestyle. Meghan's new show was supposed to be her comeback, a glossy cooking meets lifestyle project centered around reinvention and authenticity. But for Doria, that word, authenticity, had become a wound, a word that cut deep, because she knew the one story Meghan refused to be authentic about was her own. Picture it, a mother watching her daughter stand before millions, preaching honesty, vulnerability, and truth, while privately guarding a secret that could unravel it all. For Doria, the weight became unbearable. The walls of silence she had built for decades began to crack. And then came the moment that changed everything. According to one insider, Meghan had demanded that Doria appear on an episode of her new show. It was meant to be heartwarming, a mother-daughter reunion segment. Cameras, warm lighting, a cozy kitchen set. But off-camera, Doria reportedly refused. She told Meghan she was done being part of the illusion. The two argued. Voices were raised. And that's when Doria said it. "You've been lying about your age for years, and you know it." Those words, spoken in frustration, were overheard by a production assistant. Within hours, the rumor had left the set and found its way online. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Instead, Doria called for a meeting that very night. The people who were there say she looked pale, calm, and resolute. She spoke slowly, carefully. She didn't raise her voice, but her words carried the weight of years. "I'm not doing this to hurt her," she said. "I'm doing this because I can't carry it anymore." She revealed details, dates, locations, documents that painted a very different timeline of Meghan's early years. Birth certificates that didn't match public records. Photos that appeared older than claimed. A date of birth that shifted from 1981 to 1976. It was the truth she had kept buried through Meghan's rise, through the royal wedding, through the Oprah interview. When Meghan heard, she reportedly broke down. Sources claim she screamed into her phone, "Why would you do this now?" Her eyes, once composed and camera-ready, turned bloodshot from tears and anger. Her team scrambled to issue statements, deny rumors, and threaten legal action. But it was too late. The genie was out. And this time, it wasn't coming back. Still, we have to ask, what's the real motivation behind Doria's revelation? Is this about justice or jealousy? Some believe Doria feared being cut off financially, that Meghan had tightened control over her mother's involvement in upcoming projects. Others think it's spiritual. Doria, a woman deeply rooted in mindfulness and emotional healing, may have believed that carrying lies corrupts the soul. Or perhaps it's simpler, a mother realizing her silence had become part of her daughter's deception. What makes this story even more unsettling is how much of it connects to Meghan's public persona. She's built her brand on the idea of transparency, talking about mental health, motherhood, and authenticity. But now, with Doria's confession, that very brand might be collapsing. Because once people start doubting your origin story, they start doubting everything else. There's also a haunting irony here. For years, Meghan accused the royal family of hiding truths, of crafting illusions to maintain their image. Yet it's her own image now under the same scrutiny. The same tactics she once exposed are the ones being used against her. The symmetry is almost poetic and cruel. As the story unfolds, more contradictions are emerging. Meghan's high school graduation timeline doesn't align with her supposed birth year. Former classmates recall her attending events reserved for older students. Even some early modeling agencies have conflicting documents on her intake age. These discrepancies, once dismissed as minor, now feel monumental. And in Hollywood, perception is everything. Age affects casting, contracts, and image. If Meghan had indeed shaved off 5 years to fit a more marketable mold, then Doria's revelation could mean more than embarrassment. It could mean breach of contract, fraud, or defamation. Suddenly, this isn't just a family matter, it's a legal one. But perhaps the most chilling detail is how calm Doria reportedly was. Witnesses said she didn't cry. She didn't shake. She simply spoke her truth and left. She turned off her phone that night and hasn't been seen publicly since. Some say she's gone into hiding. Others believe she's preparing a formal statement. What's certain is that Meghan has been left reeling, her plans for a triumphant public return now overshadowed by the one person she never expected to betray her, her mother. The image of Meghan pacing in her Montecito mansion, eyes red and glassy, muttering, "It can't be true," is haunting. Whether those tears were from guilt, anger, or fear, no one can say. But one thing's clear, her world, carefully constructed over decades, has begun to fracture. Not from an enemy's attack, but from the truth whispered by the woman who gave her life. And that brings us to the question that lingers like smoke after a fire. If Meghan's real age has been hidden all along, what else has she kept from the world? What secrets still lie buried beneath the surface of her carefully curated story? And what did Doria mean when she said, "It's not just about age, it's about everything that came before"? Because this revelation isn't just about numbers. It's about identity, about the illusion of reinvention, about the uncomfortable line between truth and survival. And as we peel back each layer of this unfolding drama, one thing becomes undeniable. Doria Ragland didn't just expose her daughter's age. She lit a fuse that could destroy an empire built on image, influence, and illusion. But this is only the beginning. Because what came after that midnight confession changed everything. And no one, least of all Meghan, saw it coming. The air that night was too still, almost unnatural. Los Angeles has a way of humming, even at midnight, a constant whisper of cars, sirens, and restless lives moving under the glow of city lights. But not this time. On that night, the sound seemed to have been swallowed whole, as if the city itself knew something was about to happen. Doria Ragland's car, a silver Tesla with its headlights dimmed, glided quietly through the empty streets of Pasadena. No bodyguards, no entourage, no driver, just her, and a folder resting on the passenger seat that she had been gripping so tightly, the paper inside had begun to crinkle. It wasn't an ordinary folder. Inside were copies of documents that had been locked away for decades. Birth records, photos, letters, evidence of a truth Doria had carried in silence since the day Meghan first told the world who she was. That night, she decided it was time to let it out. Why? What makes a mother turn against her own daughter? Was it betrayal, fear, or a strange sense of freedom that comes from telling the truth after a lifetime of pretending? Doria didn't answer those questions aloud. She just drove. Her hands shook slightly on the steering wheel. The clock on the dashboard glowed 12:27 a.m. When she reached the house, a modest, two-story place tucked between tall sycamore trees, she didn't knock. She had the key. Inside, the lights were low. Two people were waiting in the living room. One was an attorney, middle-aged, thin-framed, with a cautious look that screamed he didn't want to be there. The other was an old friend of the family, a retired nurse who had known Meghan since birth. Doria closed the door behind her and exhaled for the first time all evening. "She's going to hate me," she whispered. The nurse looked up, her face heavy with concern. "You sure you want to do this now?" Doria nodded. "If I don't, someone else will. I'd rather it come from me." Those words hung in the air like fog, because everyone in that room knew what she meant. The walls of secrecy that had protected Meghan's crafted identity were starting to crumble. Too many leaks, too many questions. And if Doria didn't take control of the story, someone else, perhaps someone much crueler, would. As she opened the folder, the silence deepened. The sound of paper sliding against paper seemed deafening. Her eyes flickered to an old black-and-white hospital photo. It showed a nurse holding a newborn wrapped in a patterned blanket. The date scrawled on the back didn't match Meghan's official birth records. 5 years apart. 5 years erased from existence. Doria took a deep breath. She was born in 76, not 81. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "You're certain?" "I was there." For a few seconds, no one spoke. The gravity of that confession sank in slowly, like the ground giving way beneath them. Meanwhile, miles away, Meghan Markle was wide awake in her Montecito mansion. It was almost 1 a.m., and she couldn't sleep. She had felt uneasy all day, an unshakable tension that seemed to pulse in the air. She had called her assistant twice, checked her emails, and reread the script for her upcoming show. Anything to distract herself. But nothing worked. Then her phone buzzed. A message from a number she hadn't seen in months. "We need to talk. Now." It was from her mother. Her stomach dropped. Doria never texted like that. Meghan called immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic started to rise in her chest. She tried again. Nothing. Her pulse quickened. She stood by the window, staring out into the darkness. Somewhere out there, her mother was meeting with someone. But who? And about what? It's strange how silence can be louder than any scream. Meghan had lived through public humiliation, royal rejection, and tabloid storms, but nothing felt as terrifying as that unanswered call. When dawn began to break, the headlines started flooding in. Anonymous sources had leaked word of a late-night emergency meeting involving Doria Ragland. The tabloids ran with it, throwing out every possible theory: money disputes, health scares, even secret family betrayals. Meghan's team went into overdrive, issuing vague denials, hoping to smother the fire before it caught flame. But by sunrise, one headline cut through everything else. Doria Ragland reveals Meghan Markle's true age in midnight confession. The damage was done. Inside that Pasadena house, Doria sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped. The lawyer asked her to clarify, to give context before they went public. "You understand what this means," he said quietly. "If this goes out, it won't stop. Reporters will come for you. For her. For everyone." Doria nodded. "I've lived with worse truths. But I can't live with this one anymore." The nurse, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. "She built her life on a story. Doria, you really think she can survive the truth now?" Doria looked down at the old photograph again. "She'll survive. But maybe she'll finally see what she's become." Those words revealed something deeper than anger. It was heartbreak. The kind that only mothers know. Outside, the sound of an approaching car broke the stillness. Headlights swept across the curtains. The lawyer peered through the window. "Someone's here." Doria froze. She hadn't told anyone else about the meeting. The car idled for a moment, then drove off. But in that instant, her hands trembled again. Because deep down, she knew Meghan had people watching her. Always. The attorney stood. "We can't keep this in writing," he said. "Once this folder leaves your hands, it's no longer yours to control." Doria smiled faintly. It never was. When the clock struck 3, the meeting ended. Doria gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and walked out into the cool night air. She stood by her car for a moment, staring up at the moon. Her eyes welled up, but no tears fell. She whispered something to herself, too quietly for anyone to hear. Then she got into her car and drove off. By the time she reached her home, her phone was already buzzing with calls. Reporters, unknown numbers, even a private investigator. But one call made her stop breathing. "Meghan." She hesitated before answering. "Mom," Meghan's voice cracked. "What did you do?" Doria didn't answer right away. "I told the truth," she finally said. "You've destroyed me." Meghan screamed. "You've ruined everything." Doria's tone stayed calm, almost maternal. "No, baby. I freed you." Then she hung up. That single conversation, that abrupt silence at the end of the call, became the breaking point. Meghan collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Her eyes burned red, bloodshot with exhaustion and disbelief. Around her, aides scrambled to contact lawyers and crisis managers. They spoke in low voices, but she barely heard them. All she could think about was her mother's last word. Freed. Freed from what? From lies? From illusion? Or from her? Meanwhile, in London, royal insiders woke up to chaos. King Charles's communications team had already begun drafting statements. The palace had no intention of involving itself, but the optics were impossible to ignore. The Duchess of Sussex, formerly a senior royal, was now being accused of falsifying her age, and by her own mother, no less. For Meghan, this wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was professional suicide. Hollywood agents whispered. Producers reevaluated contracts. Sponsors paused campaigns. The woman who had built a brand on reinvention and resilience now faced the one enemy she couldn't outmaneuver: the truth. But here's the thing. The world didn't turn on her immediately. Not yet. People wanted proof. They wanted to believe there had been some misunderstanding, that Doria's words had been twisted. Meghan's PR team crafted a carefully worded statement, hinting that Doria was emotionally unwell. But that move backfired. Within 24 hours, a photograph surfaced online. The same black-and-white baby photo that Doria had shown in that meeting. The timestamp was clear. The hospital's records, cross-referenced by journalists, confirmed the date: August 1976. The internet exploded. Was it real? Was it doctored? Some fans argued it was part of a smear campaign. Others saw it as confirmation of long-held suspicions. Even late-night hosts began to joke about Meghan's ageless charm. But behind the humor was a growing unease, because the image looked real. Too real. In Montecito, Meghan watched the coverage unfold, her reflection flickering across the TV screen. Each time her name appeared, she flinched. Each headline cut a little deeper. And in that moment, She did something no one expected. She called her production team and told them to halt filming for her new show indefinitely. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled as she spoke. "We can't move forward until this is handled." Handled. A word that meant control. A word Meghan had always clung to. But now, control was slipping away. Outside, the California sun was rising, bathing the mansion in gold. But for Meghan, it felt like darkness. Every sound, the birds, the wind, even her own heartbeat, felt too loud. The world was closing in, and she knew the question on everyone's mind. If her age was a lie, what else was? She pressed her palms against her face and whispered, "She's not going to stop, is she?" Because deep down, she knew her mother. Once Doria decided to speak, there would be no going back. And she was right. Because as the media storm intensified, Doria Ragland had already agreed to a second meeting. This time with someone who knew more than anyone expected. Someone who could verify everything. But who was it? And why were they so eager to help her? The truth about that meeting would send shockwaves across the world. And when Meghan found out who sat across from her mother that night, her entire world would collapse in ways no one could have imagined. What Doria said next would not just expose a secret. It would open a door Meghan had spent her entire life trying to keep locked. And once that door opened, there would be no shutting it again. What if the story you've told the world your whole life was built on a single number, a number that wasn't true? What if every magazine profile, every interview, every carefully worded biography suddenly turned into evidence of a lie? That's the nightmare Meghan Markle found herself in the moment Doria's revelation hit the headlines. People say age is just a number. But in Hollywood and in royalty, it's currency. It shapes perception. It dictates opportunity. It defines your narrative. For Meghan, that number had been everything. And now it was gone. The morning after Doria's late-night meeting, a hush fell over Montecito. Neighbors noticed Meghan's usual morning jog didn't happen. The blinds in her kitchen stayed drawn. Her security detail, normally discreet, stood closer to the gates. It was as if the entire estate was bracing for impact. Inside, Meghan sat alone at the kitchen table. Her laptop glowed with endless notifications, emails from publicists, texts from Harry, alerts from news outlets. But her eyes were fixed on one single headline. The Duchess's hidden years. Was Meghan Markle really born in 1976? She read it 3 times, hoping it would somehow make less sense the third time around. It didn't. She grabbed her phone and called her lawyer. "Tell me it's not real," she said. "Tell me someone fabricated this." The lawyer hesitated. "The document checks out, Meghan. The timestamp, the handwriting, it's consistent. If this is fake, it's the most convincing forgery I've ever seen." She felt the air leave her lungs. "That's impossible. My mother wouldn't. She couldn't." But deep down, she knew Doria could. Her mother had always been the quiet observer, the one who saw through her daughter's layers of performance. Doria had stayed silent through every scandal, every accusation, every royal fallout. She had been the one constant in Meghan's chaos. Until now. The contradiction was brutal. The same woman Meghan had called her rock was now the one person undermining her entire existence. And the reason? Well, that's where things got complicated. According to a family insider, Doria had been approached weeks earlier by a former acquaintance from the old neighborhood, someone who remembered Meghan as a little girl, attending a birthday party in 1984. The problem? If Meghan was born in 1981, that would make her 3 years old. But the photos from that day showed her as a tall, confident child who looked closer to 8. That single inconsistency sent Doria digging. She went through boxes she hadn't touched in decades. Old photo albums, hospital bracelets, handwritten notes from the days after Meghan's birth. And that's when she realized something she couldn't unsee. The official records Meghan used publicly had been altered. Slightly, cleverly, but altered nonetheless. The birth certificate she'd shown the world listed a different hospital. The handwriting wasn't Doria's. And the date, August 4th, 1981, was a neat, clean, untraceable entry. But Doria's original copy, tucked away in a baby scrapbook, told a different story. The date written there was August 4th, 1976. 5 years erased. Doria stared at that date for hours. She thought of the years that followed, the schooling, the auditions, the first jobs. How Meghan had always been mature for her age, how casting directors often assumed she was older. And then she thought about what her daughter had told her years later, when she first started getting attention in Hollywood. "Mom," Meghan had said, "you have to understand, no one wants a 30-year-old newcomer. They want a 20-something with potential." At the time, Doria had brushed it off. Everyone exaggerates in Hollywood, right? But now, sitting in that Pasadena living room, she realized it wasn't exaggeration. It was reinvention, and Meghan had done it so well, so seamlessly, that even Doria had almost forgotten the truth. Almost. Meanwhile, journalists across the globe began connecting dots. Old interviews resurfaced, clips of Meghan on red carpets, laughing when asked about her age. "You never ask a lady that," she joked once. Fans had thought it was charming. Now, it seemed calculated. Online sleuths began posting side-by-side photos from Meghan's early acting career. The timeline didn't add up. By the time she landed her first notable role in the mid-2000s, she would have been nearly 30 if born in 1976, but she had publicly claimed to be in her early 20s. Suddenly, every smile, every speech about defying expectations looked different, and the public turned restless. Not furious, not yet, but suspicious. Let's pause for a second. Imagine you were in her shoes. Would you do it? Would you lie about your age if it meant changing your future? If it meant opening doors that would otherwise slam shut? It's easy to judge, but it's harder to understand the desperation behind such a choice. Meghan's rise was never guaranteed. She wasn't born into fame. She fought her way into rooms that didn't want her. Maybe shaving off a few years wasn't deceit, it was survival. But the problem with survival tactics is they don't stay hidden forever. That morning, Harry finally confronted her. He had been up all night, pacing, reading, scrolling. When he found her sitting in the kitchen, her face pale, he didn't shout. He just asked quietly, "Is it true?" Meghan's eyes flickered. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't do that," he said, his voice breaking. "Please, I'm asking you directly. Were you born in 1976? Her silence was louder than any confession. Harry exhaled, staring at her for a long moment. "You could have told me. You wouldn't have understood. Try me." She shook her head. "You think the palace would have accepted me if I'd been 36 instead of 31 when we met? You think your family would have let a woman that age marry the spare to the throne?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew the truth. The monarchy thrives on optics. Every detail, age, background, bloodline matters. Maybe Meghan hadn't just lied for ambition. Maybe she lied because the system left her no choice. But that reasoning didn't change the reality. A lie was still a lie. While they argued, Doria was sitting quietly at her kitchen table, sipping tea. She wasn't watching the news. She didn't need to. She knew the story had gone global. Her phone had stopped ringing hours ago. No more calls from lawyers or friends. Just silence. She didn't regret it. Not yet. What haunted her, though, were the memories. The moments when Meghan had looked at her, eyes burning with determination, saying, "I'm going to build something bigger than the royal family." Doria had believed her. She had supported her. But now, watching how the world turned on her daughter, she wondered if truth and ambition could ever coexist. Back in Montecito, Meghan sat on the floor of her walk-in closet, surrounded by boxes of old photographs and scripts. She dug through one after another, searching for something, anything, that could disprove Doria's claim. Every folder she opened led back to the same reality. The dates never matched. Her breathing quickened, the edges of her vision blurred. And then, buried under a stack of faded envelopes, she found something that made her go still. A letter, her own handwriting, addressed to a casting agent she'd worked with years ago. The date at the top, January 1998. In it, she thanked the agent for taking a chance on a 22-year-old actress with big dreams. The math didn't lie. If she was 22 in 1998, she couldn't have been born in 1981. She would have been 17. Her hands trembled as she reread the line. The lie had been sitting in her own handwriting all along. Tears welled up, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't fix this. She knew what had to happen next. She needed to get ahead of the story, reclaim the narrative, spin it before it spun her. She picked up her phone and dialed her publicist. "We're not denying it anymore," she said flatly. "We're reframing it." The publicist hesitated. "Reframing it how?" "As empowerment," Meghan replied. "As reinvention. As owning my story." That was her gift, turning damage into dialogue. She had done it before with the royal rift, with the press backlash, with every scandal that tried to bury her. But this time was different. Because this time, her opponent wasn't the palace or the tabloids or the internet. It was her own mother. And as Meghan began to plan her next move, Doria was planning hers. A new leak hit the press 2 days later. Someone had handed over copies of Meghan's early school records, attendance forms, ID cards, official photos, all bearing the same birth year, 1976. The source? An anonymous family member. The press went wild. Reporters staked out Doria's home. Journalists from London to Sydney called it the age scandal. But behind the headlines was a question no one had asked yet. What if Doria wasn't acting alone? Because evidence had started surfacing that someone else, someone with deep access to royal circles, had been feeding her information. Someone who wanted Meghan's image dismantled completely. And when that name finally came out, it would shake both Buckingham Palace and Hollywood to their core. Because the truth about Meghan's age was only the beginning. What came next would expose the one secret that connected her rise, her marriage, and her downfall. Something so explosive that even Doria hadn't dared speak it yet. And once it came out, there would be no saving Meghan Markle from herself. It's strange, isn't it? The way truth has a pulse. The way it starts quietly, beating beneath the surface, and then, suddenly, it roars. Doria Ragland had spent decades holding her breath, living in the quiet hum of that hidden truth. And now that it was out, the silence she'd once found comforting had become unbearable. The world wanted answers, and they wanted them from her. She sat alone on her porch that evening, the sky washed in dusky purple, the air thick with the kind of stillness that follows a storm but promises another. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Journalists, talk shows, old acquaintances who had ignored her for years. Everyone wanted a statement. But Doria wasn't ready to speak to cameras. Not yet. Before she told the world, she needed to tell someone else, the one person who had witnessed the lie from the beginning. Her sister. It had been years since they'd spoken. Time and fame had stretched the bond thin, but when Doria called, her sister answered immediately. Doria? I thought you'd forgotten my number. Her voice was warm, but edged with curiosity. I need to talk, Doria said quietly. Face to face. An hour later, she drove across town to a small house that smelled of lavender and old books. Her sister, Denise, stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of shock and sympathy. You really did it, didn't you? Doria nodded. I had to. They sat at the kitchen table, cups of tea growing cold between them. Doria explained everything, the late-night meeting, the folder, the documents, the aftermath. When she finished, Denise didn't speak right away. She just looked at her, studying her face like she was seeing her for the first time. You think you did the right thing, Denise finally said. I know I did. But you realize what you've done, don't you? You've set fire to her life. Doria's gaze drifted to the window. Her life was built on a fire. I just stopped pretending it wasn't burning. That line stayed hanging in the air. Because here's the thing. This wasn't about exposing Meghan out of spite. It was about release. About years of suppressed truth boiling over. The lie about Meghan's age was never just about vanity. It was about rewriting history. Doria took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she continued. I've carried this for too long. Every time she smiled into a camera, every time she called herself the self-made duchess, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who swore she'd never lie to me. And then I saw what she became. Fame changed her, Denise. It turned her into someone I don't recognize. Her sister sighed. You think telling the truth will bring her back? I don't know. But maybe it'll stop her from losing herself completely. As they talked, a camera crew was setting up just a few miles away. A well-known journalist. One of those names that made headlines for making headlines had gotten wind that Doria was preparing to speak publicly. Offers flooded in. Exclusive interviews, six-figure deals, documentary rights. But Doria turned them all down. Money wasn't the point. She didn't want fame. She wanted freedom. Still, the world doesn't wait for permission. By midnight, an audio recording surfaced online. The voice was unmistakably hers. Calm, measured, haunting. She wasn't born in 1981, the voice said. She was born in 1976. And I can't carry the lie anymore. No one knew who leaked it. Maybe someone at that first meeting. Maybe the lawyer. Maybe someone much closer. But the damage was irreversible. When Meghan heard the audio, something inside her broke. The betrayal wasn't just public now, it was permanent. She sat on her couch, clutching her phone, replaying her mother's voice over and over. The tone wasn't angry or vengeful. It was tired. It was true. And that made it worse. Harry walked into the room, phone in hand. "It's everywhere," he said softly. Meghan didn't look up. "I know. They're saying you faked everything. Your age, your past, even your school records." She turned to him, eyes red, voice barely a whisper. "And do you believe that too?" Harry hesitated. "I don't know what to believe anymore." That sentence landed like a knife. In that moment, Meghan realized this wasn't just a public scandal. It was a private collapse. The man who had defended her against his entire family was now questioning her truth. And worse, he had reason to. Meanwhile, Doria was sitting in her car, parked outside a community center where she used to teach yoga. She hadn't meant for the recording to get out. But maybe, she thought, it was better this way. She didn't have to face the cameras or twist her words. Her truth was out, unedited, unfiltered. Still, she wasn't done. There was more to say, much more. Later that week, Doria agreed to meet with a journalist, not for money, but to set the record straight. The meeting took place in a small, windowless office. The journalist, a woman named Helen, placed a recorder on the table and said gently, "Whenever you're ready." Doria hesitated, then began. "People think this is about a date of birth. It's not. It's about the lies that grew from it. It's about how pretending became survival for her, and for me." Helen leaned forward. "You mean you helped her?" Doria nodded slowly. "In the beginning, yes. I told myself it was harmless. She was trying to make it in Hollywood. Casting agents wanted younger faces. She said it would only be temporary. That once she made it, she'd tell the truth. But that moment never came. The lie became her foundation." "Why didn't you stop her?" Doria's voice cracked. "Because she's my daughter. And I thought I was protecting her." The journalist stayed quiet. Doria continued, her tone heavier now. "When she met Harry, I wanted to tell him. I did. But Meghan begged me not to. She said it would ruin everything, that the royal family would never accept her if they knew she was nearly 40. And maybe she was right. But every time I looked at her in those wedding photos, smiling like she'd beaten the world, I couldn't stop thinking about the truth. About how fragile it all was." Helen scribbled notes furiously. "So what changed? Why speak now?" Doria stared at the wall. "Because lies don't die quietly. They eat you from the inside. And lately, I've felt hollow." That confession hit the journalist harder than she expected. Because there was no malice in Doria's words, just exhaustion. A lifetime of silence breaking open. The interview ended, but the ripple it caused was immediate. The recording went viral within hours. Commentators called it the quietest explosion in celebrity history. Social media fractured into chaos. Some praised Doria for her honesty, calling her brave. Others condemned her, accusing her of betrayal. Meghan, meanwhile, went dark. No public appearances. No posts. No statements. She was reportedly holed up in her mansion, avoiding calls, even from Harry. He had flown to London on personal matters, leaving her to face the storm alone. And as the world debated whether Doria was a hero or a traitor, another leak surfaced. This time, it wasn't an audio file. It was a photo. An old Polaroid, dated 1983, showing Doria holding a little girl in a floral dress. The back of the photo read, "Meghan's first day of kindergarten." If the date was real, that would make Meghan 7, not 2. The internet erupted again. Reporters dug deeper, contacting schools, former teachers, classmates. Every new detail seemed to confirm Doria's story. But the truth, as always, was never that simple. Because someone else had entered the picture, a name no one expected. Someone who claimed to have been there the day Meghan was born. Someone with ties not just to the family, but to a powerful institution that wanted this story to disappear. And this person was about to reveal something even Doria hadn't said. Something that could explain why Meghan's age was changed in the first place. Something that could drag the royal family back into the storm she thought she'd left behind. Because Doria's confession wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a bigger truth that had been buried for nearly half a century. And when it finally came out, it wouldn't just rewrite Meghan's past, it would rewrite her bloodline. The entertainment world has always been a strange kingdom. A glittering realm where secrets travel faster than sound, where whispers are traded like currency, and where truth bends depending on who's buying. If Buckingham Palace was built on centuries of silence, Hollywood was built on gossip, and in Hollywood, Meghan Markle's name was suddenly worth a fortune. The first whispers began in the casting rooms. Long before she wore designer gowns or royal titles, Meghan had been another struggling actress, headshots in hand, waiting for a chance to be seen. Casting assistants remembered her as polite but guarded, the kind of person who seemed to edit her own history mid-conversation. She was always mysterious about her age, one producer later said. She'd laugh it off or change the subject, but there was always something she wasn't saying. And now, in the wake of Doria's confession, those long-forgotten memories came roaring back. People who had worked with Meghan years ago suddenly found themselves fielding calls from reporters, all asking the same question. Did she ever lie about her age? The answers varied, but the tone didn't. Everyone seemed to know something, or at least believed they did. Some claimed her early resumes listed birth years that kept shifting. Others swore she had used multiple identification documents. A few even recalled a conversation where she admitted she was a few years older than the system thinks. The problem wasn't just that these whispers existed, it was that they started aligning. And in Hollywood, when enough whispers start to sound like a chorus, a reputation begins to crumble. Meanwhile, Meghan's former acting coach, a woman named Leanne Porter, received an unexpected visit from a reporter outside her Beverly Hills studio. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. Leanne hesitated, then sighed. She was older than the others, yes, she said carefully. But she worked twice as hard. I didn't think age mattered to her. Until it did. Those words hit the tabloids within the hour. Inside Meghan's Montecito home, the tension was suffocating. Her phone buzzed constantly. Agents, friends, producers, but she ignored them all. The only sound was the rhythmic tick of a clock echoing through the marble hallway. Her PR team was in meltdown mode, holding emergency meetings, drafting statements, plotting the next move. Yet nothing they wrote could outpace the wildfire now consuming her name. By noon, late-night hosts were cracking jokes about the timeless Duchess. Social media was flooded with side-by-side comparisons of Meghan's earliest acting gigs and her supposed birth year. The comments were merciless. She's been 36 for 10 years, one post read. Even the royal family can't stop time. But behind the mockery was something more sinister. A growing belief that Meghan's entire image had been engineered, a calculated reinvention from the ground up. And in Hollywood, that wasn't just frowned upon. It was considered treason. Because in an industry obsessed with authenticity, the worst sin was pretending too perfectly. Yet, as the noise grew louder, a few people stayed oddly quiet. The ones who actually knew her back then. They had seen things they'd never spoken about. Things that didn't fit into the glossy narrative Meghan later sold to the world. One of them was a man named Vincent Locke, a small-time director who had worked with Meghan in the early 2000s. When reporters reached out to him, he declined to comment. But 3 days later, an anonymous insider leaked a snippet of a conversation he'd recorded years ago, back when Meghan was auditioning for a pilot that never aired. In the recording, Vincent's voice is calm, businesslike. Meghan's tone, however, carries that familiar edge, confident, charming, strategic. I just need you to adjust the age bracket on the sheet, she says. I can play 25 easily. But you're 32, he replies, almost teasing. A pause. Then Meghan laughs. You think they'll hire a 32-year-old to play a rookie lawyer? Come on, Vincent. Let's be realistic. When the clip leaked, it was explosive. Networks replayed it endlessly. The laughter, once harmless, now sounded like confession. And suddenly, the story wasn't just about a 5-year lie. It was about a pattern. A life edited and rewritten for the sake of survival. Across Los Angeles, industry insiders whispered about how common it was. Everyone does it, said one producer. But not everyone gets caught by their own mother. That became the line that stuck. Doria's betrayal turned into late-night punchlines and online memes. Meghan was no longer seen as a victim of royal politics or media cruelty. She was the architect of her own undoing. But not everyone believed she deserved it. Some pointed out that Hollywood itself created the conditions that made her lie in the first place. The system forces women to stay young forever, an actress tweeted. She just played the game better than most. Still, sympathy couldn't compete with spectacle. The scandal had become too big, too profitable, too addictive. While the world debated morality, Meghan's inner circle started fracturing. One of her closest friends, an unnamed stylist who had once helped her prepare for royal appearances, stopped answering her calls. A producer she had been in talks with for her upcoming show quietly pulled out of the project. Even a few allies within the streaming world, executives who had defended her during the Megxit fallout, started keeping their distance. But perhaps the most devastating blow came from someone she never expected. Tyler Perry. According to leaked emails, Perry had reached out privately, urging Meghan to get ahead of the story before it consumed her. He even offered to arrange a quiet interview, a way to explain herself on her own terms. But when Meghan hesitated, wanting to wait out the news cycle, he pulled back. "You can't outwait truth," he reportedly told her. "It has its own clock." And that clock was ticking faster every day. Meanwhile, Doria had disappeared from public view. Her house in California was empty. Her car hadn't moved in days. Neighbors claimed she'd gone to stay with relatives up north. Others believed she'd been silenced, either by guilt, by lawyers, or by something more powerful. Rumors spread that the royal family had quietly intervened, hoping to contain the story before it reached dangerous territory. Because what few people realized was that Meghan's real age wasn't just an embarrassing secret. It was tied to something far more complicated, a timeline that didn't fit with her father's records, her schooling, or even the early years she'd spent in the UK before her acting career took off. There were missing months, misplaced documents, unexplained trips. And one name kept appearing in those gaps, a name that Doria hadn't spoken yet. But she would. Because a week after her confession, Doria agreed to meet with a former royal aide who had reached out under the pretense of understanding her motivations. The meeting was private, unrecorded, or so they thought. According to leaked transcripts later released by an anonymous whistleblower, the aide asked a single question that changed everything. "Mrs. Ragland, was your daughter's age changed to protect her, or someone else?" There was a long silence. Then Doria's voice, quiet but firm. "Both." That one word sent shockwaves through both London and Hollywood. Protect her from what? Or from whom? Speculation exploded overnight. Was Meghan's age altered to hide an early relationship? An unflattering connection? A family secret? Some tabloids even suggested the truth could threaten royal legitimacy itself. Through it all, Meghan stayed silent. Her lawyers threatened lawsuits. Her team denied everything. But the cracks in her story were now too deep to patch. And then, one night, a paparazzo captured something strange. Meghan driving alone, past midnight, heading toward an unfamiliar address in Pasadena, the same neighborhood where Doria's first meeting had taken place. Cameras followed her until she pulled into a dark driveway and disappeared inside. For nearly 2 hours, the house lights stayed off. Then, just before 3 a.m., a single window flickered with light. Silhouettes moved. 2 figures, one standing, one seated. Voices could be faintly heard, though not clear enough to make out. When Meghan emerged, her eyes were red, her hands trembling. She climbed into her car and drove off, fast, her face streaked with tears. No one knows exactly what was said that night between mother and daughter, but one witness claimed to hear the word forgiveness shouted from inside, followed by silence. And by morning, another story broke. A new witness, a Hollywood veteran, had come forward, claiming to know the truth about why Meghan's real age had been concealed. Not for vanity, not for fame, but because of something that had happened long before she ever became an actress. Something buried deep in both Hollywood and royal history. The next revelation would connect Doria's secret to a powerful network that had kept quiet for decades, a web of names, deals, and cover-ups that stretched from Los Angeles to London. And when that truth finally surfaced, it would make the age scandal look like child's play. Because the whispers weren't just about numbers anymore. They were about blood. The story was already burning across continents when the next twist hit, but no one, not even the journalists who'd been chasing every lead, expected this. For days, people had been talking about Meghan's real age, the Hollywood whispers, the leaked recordings, and that emotional meeting with her mother. But now, something bigger was emerging. Something physical. Something that could turn suspicion into proof. It started with a man named Craig Melrose, a former administrative clerk who worked at the Los Angeles County Department of Health in the late 70s and early 80s. For decades, Craig had been invisible to the world, a quiet man with a routine life. But when the Meghan Markle story exploded, he came forward with a claim that shook every newsroom in America. He said that in 1981, hospital birth records from Canoga Park were mysteriously altered, pages removed, signatures rewritten, and a new set of files submitted by someone high up. And the name on one of those altered entries? Rachel Meghan Markle. At first, no one believed him. Every day, tabloids were filled with wild claims, and Craig sounded like another opportunist. But then he provided evidence, a microfilm copy of the original birth registry. It was blurry, faded, but clear enough to show one key difference. The entry for Meghan's birth had originally been recorded under the year 1976. Reporters went into frenzy mode. Calls to the county offices, legal requests, on-site verifications. Within 24 hours, the department confirmed that an archival discrepancy did exist. They claimed it was likely a clerical error, but no one bought that. Too convenient. Too timely. The missing documents became the new obsession. News vans parked outside archives. Social media feeds filled with conspiracy threads. Everyone wanted to know who had changed the records and why. Inside her mansion, Meghan was unraveling. She hadn't slept properly in days. Harry was still in London, trying to contain his family's quiet panic, and her team was in disarray. Her publicist begged her not to comment. Her lawyer warned her to stay off social media, but she couldn't help it. She needed to see what people were saying. She scrolled endlessly through posts, her face illuminated by the glow of the screen. Words like liar, fraud, imposter filled the comments section beneath every photo of her. Even former fans were turning cold. She whispered to herself, "This isn't happening. This isn't happening." But it was. Then her phone rang. It was a private number. She hesitated before answering. "Meghan Markle?" A low voice said. "Yes, who's this?" "I think you'll want to hear what I found," the man said. "You've got 5 minutes before I send this to the Sun." Her chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" "Hospital transfer forms," the man said. "Your mother wasn't the only one in the delivery room that day. There's another signature, a name that doesn't match your official file." Meghan's pulse quickened. "Send it to me. Now." A few seconds later, an email pinged in. Attached was a photo of a yellowing document stamped with the words confidential medical record. Her mother's name was there, Doria L. Ragland. But beneath it, barely visible, was another, D. Trevor. Her hand trembled. She didn't recognize the name. Or maybe she did and didn't want to admit it. She called her lawyer immediately. "I need to know who this D. Trevor is," she said. "I'll check," he replied, but his tone was hesitant. "Are you sure you want to open that door?" "I don't have a choice," she snapped. The next morning, he called back. His voice was low, careful, like someone speaking near an open flame. "We found her," he said. "Dr. Deborah Trevor. She was a private physician working under contract with a discreet birthing clinic in Pasadena. That clinic doesn't exist anymore. It was shut down in 1977 after multiple legal issues." Meghan frowned. "Legal issues?" "Falsified birth documents," he said. "Paid age adjustments, fake birth dates for infants adopted under private arrangements. Wealthy clients used it to protect identities, change timelines, even hide paternity." Silence. For the first time, Meghan felt something colder than fear, realization. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying," the lawyer interrupted softly. "If your birth went through that clinic, the age change may not have been about fame. It may have been about lineage." She couldn't breathe. Across the city, a journalist named Rachel Quinn was piecing the same story together. She'd been covering celebrity scandals for years, but this one had pulled her into something far deeper, something that felt orchestrated. She had obtained a lead that tied Meghan's birth alteration to a discrete payment made in 1981 to the Pasadena Clinic Fund by an entity listed only as TR Associates. The address? A legal office in London. That connection, between a clinic accused of falsifying births and a payment trail leading to London, sent shockwaves through Rachel. She started digging, and what she found hinted at something extraordinary. Meghan's records might have been manipulated to obscure her paternal origins long before she ever met Prince Harry. Meanwhile, Meghan confronted her mother. It happened late one night, over the phone. Her voice was shaking with anger. "You knew, didn't you?" she said. You knew about the documents. You knew they were changed. Doria didn't deny it. She just sighed. Not everything was my choice, Meghan. What does that mean? There were people involved you don't understand, Doria said. People who wanted to protect their own interests. You were never supposed to find out. Protect me from what, Mom? Doria's voice cracked. Not what, who? That answer sent chills down Meghan's spine. For the next 3 days, no one could reach Doria. She went completely silent. Her phone disconnected, her car gone. The media speculated wildly. Had she fled? Was she being silenced? Was she hiding from someone? Then, suddenly, a new leak hit the news, this time from inside the royal archives. An anonymous email was sent to multiple outlets with the subject line, "Missing birth record, LA to Windsor." Attached was a scanned image of a correspondence from 1982 between a British consular official and a man identified only as TR. The letter discussed a minor adjustment to an American birth certificate to ensure continuity with official British family timelines. The recipient's initials? CS. Charles Spencer, Princess Diana's brother. It didn't make sense. Why would Diana's brother be connected to a document about Meghan Markle 5 years before she even entered the royal family's orbit? Unless, of course, the connection went further back than anyone realized. Newsrooms went wild. Theories erupted. That Meghan had royal ties long before she married Harry. That her lineage had been hidden to protect reputations. That Doria had been pressured into silence decades ago. Some said it explained why Meghan's rise had always seemed both meteoric and strangely protected, why certain tabloids were warned off her private life even before her royal engagement. But Meghan wasn't thinking about theories. She was thinking about one thing, that name on the document, Dr. Deborah Trevor. She hired a private investigator to find her. 2 days later, he did. The doctor, now in her 70s, lived in Oregon, retired, and rarely spoke to anyone about her past. Meghan flew there in secret, using a pseudonym, wearing a wig and dark glasses. When Dr. Trevor answered the door, she froze for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I wondered when you'd come." Inside, the air smelled faintly of old paper and lavender. Meghan sat at the kitchen table, trembling. "I need to know what happened the day I was born," she said. The doctor hesitated, then walked to a cabinet and pulled out a small, faded notebook. She placed it on the table and flipped through pages filled with handwritten notes, initials, and dates. Finally, she stopped. "Your mother was under protection," Dr. Trevor said quietly. "There were people involved who wanted to keep her safe and keep certain names off the record. When I delivered you, there were instructions to alter the paperwork. I didn't ask questions. I just did what I was told." "Whose name was taken off?" Meghan asked. Dr. Trevor looked up. "That I can't say. I was never given the full name. Only initials." "Which were?" She hesitated. "HS." Meghan's hands shook. "HS." The doctor nodded. "That's all I know. I wish I could tell you more." HS. 2 letters that meant nothing and everything. When Meghan returned home, she didn't tell anyone what she'd learned. But that night, she sat alone in her study, staring at the initials she had scribbled onto a piece of paper. HS. Her mind went through every possibility, every person, every connection. And then it hit her. Her husband's full name, Henry Sussex. Coincidence? Maybe. But what if it wasn't? What if those initials were part of a family tie that had been hidden for decades, long before she ever met Harry? The thought was absurd, impossible, yet the documents, the names, the timelines, nothing fit neatly anymore. Somewhere, buried in the archives of both Hollywood and the Crown, the truth waited, guarded by people who understood the cost of exposure. And as the press grew hungrier, as investigators drew closer, Meghan realized one thing. The missing documents weren't missing anymore. They were coming for her. And when the next piece of the puzzle fell into place, it wouldn't just threaten her reputation, it would threaten the royal family itself. Because those initials were about to unravel a secret bigger than age, bigger than image, and older than anyone could have imagined. It was just after 2 in the morning when the call came through, the kind of hour when nothing good ever happens. The Montecito estate was silent, wrapped in darkness, save for a faint light leaking from under Meghan's study door. She had been pacing for hours, unable to shake the sound of those 2 letters echoing in her head. HS. What did they mean? Why did the past suddenly feel alive again? clawing its way back into her present. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown number. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. Same number. She stared at the screen, pulse racing, before finally answering. Hello. There was silence at first. Then, a voice, low, strained, familiar. Meghan. Her heart stopped. Mom. Doria exhaled shakily. We need to talk. Meghan